Power does what it wants. Power does what it wants. Power does what it wants.
We're on.
Hey guys, Rogue Nation here with you. We're here with you today about a story about police and those in authority trying to do whatever they can in order to hem us up, trying to find anything possible to hem us up on. And today we've got a story about a young man who was never in trouble with the law and is looking at some real time because these people just want to try to hem as many of us up as possible and get as many of us in the system as possible to justify the taxes they're taking and to justify their jobs. And today we have this story coming from this young man's fiance, and we're going to let her tell her story. I'll ask some questions here or there. She has sent me a lot of the paperwork, record requests, photographs that have been generated by her in the pursuit of justice in this case. I'll put a file together. The link will be down below the video. You guys can download the evidence, look at it yourself. Again, you know, we're all about being transparent and putting everything up front for everybody to see. So without further ado, we're going to let this young lady, Jennifer, we're going to let her tell her story. Jennifer, if you would, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hello. Well, August 11th of 2020, we were hauling some friends' equipment down to Florida from Michigan, and just inside the Florida-Georgia line, my fiance and all of us, we passed a way station. I went on ahead actually to go to the restroom, and we were in a convoy. There was myself and then Billy and then the gentleman that owned the equipment was following. And I had noticed ahead of time when I went on ahead and I messaged him and said, I'm going to go on ahead to the bathroom. I noticed there was a lot of like state troopers parked all along southbound I-75. And then I get a phone call that Billy was being pulled over. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? Because I had stopped up ahead and they still hadn't made it through. By the time I got to them, they were pulling into, or had just pulled into the State Farm Market, is what they call it, the State Farmers Market, just south of the agricultural stand. Now, passing a way station was nothing new to us. We have an F800. We know the gross vehicle weights of these vehicles. We know that the gross vehicle weight of the F700 he was driving was, in fact, 19,600 pounds. So therefore, he was not required. Also, he wasn't driving it as a commercial vehicle. This was just a favor we were doing for a friend. And so passing a way station, we did it hundreds of times. Well, then the officer, they pulled into the ag station and I proceeded to watch all this unfold. It went from, I got right out, approached the officer. I tried calling the gentleman that owned the equipment. We couldn't get a hold of him. And I noticed that immediately that there was a secondary officer, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's S-E-A-Y is his last name. He was doing a lot of like moving around. He was getting in the truck. He was getting out of the truck. He was, you know, and when I was back at the budget truck that I was driving, I noticed that he was climbing into the passenger side of the cab of the truck. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, that's Billy's medical bag that he's getting into, which was a black backpack. And second of all, I know Billy would never consent to a search because we weren't doing anything wrong. There was no reason for a search. Next thing you know, here comes, now, mind you, they put him in handcuffs. This traffic stop was initiated, they say at 10:13. However, the troopers say, calls the sergeant at 10:01 a.m. And then he also calls Hernandez, which is another officer that's on scene, at 10:03. Hernandez then calls Sergeant Ruff at 10:05. Sergeant Ruff calls Shea at 10:18 and 10:28. So I'm kind of like, when I got the phone records, I was like, I need to go back and look at the videos. Well, then, so you figure about 10:30, quarter to 11, somewhere around in there, Billy is then handcuffed and put in the back of Officer Hernandez's patrol car, which is parked right next to Sergeant Ruff's. Billy sat in that car for over 6.5 hours in handcuffs. He was never Mirandized. And several times in the video, we have statements of her saying, we didn't Mirandize them. We didn't want to mess things up for you. We're talking to the ATF. Officer Say says the same thing. Early on in the video, she mentions once, she acknowledges that they have not Mirandized him. And that, I mean, I have that written down as far as what point in the video, and it's like probably almost 2 hours in. So even 2 hours in, he's handcuffed in the back of this car. And she says to the other officer, she says, well, we should Mirandize him and ask him about this. And then something happened. I don't know. They got distracted off into doing something else. So even up until the very end of these videos, the surveillance on all the cars, he was never Mirandized. So he sat in that car for that long. Finally, about 3 hours in, I finally walk up and I said, well, is there like, can I go get them some water or something? You know, because originally the passenger was detained as well. I said, you know, if it's sealed? And they said, oh yeah, no problem. So I go down to the gas station. I come back with sealed bottle of water. This is like 3 hours into it. And so that's it. I mean, they're never checked on. There's only, I think, 2 occasions where they even go to Officer Hernandez's car, one time of which the ATF attempted to walk up to the car and the car was locked. I mean, these guys could have been dead. They could have been, I mean, there could have been anything going on inside that vehicle and they would have never known because they never checked on him. And I later found out too, I requested the interior. I requested actually all the video as a FOIA request. And I got chapters 1, 3, 4, and 5 from Hernandez's vehicle. And they're telling me now that they don't have any interior. So chapter 2 is missing, which is the entire interior of Hernandez's car where Billy is located in handcuffs, along with no video or audio. They have no audio for this officer either. So I'm going back and forth between the cars and stuff. Next thing you know, here comes ATF. Here comes what I later found out was it was something about the trust, they had to do with financials when you do a forfeiture and seizure. Then so we got ATF, the forfeiture and seizure people that do the monetary stuff. We've got Suwannee County. We've got Alachua County. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. Alachua, yes. Then you've got a bomb team that comes, and here's this guy in a half bomb suit, okay, out on the ground. And I have actually a still photo of him out on the ground with a box in front of him. I'm assuming that they're going to like attempt to detonate or something like that. Later on, it was determined that I guess he was testing to see if they were live or not. I do not have that report. That's been a real hush hush. When Billy first had his public defender in the very beginning, she actually had a really hard time getting that report even from ATF because apparently it was in Georgia. All the testing was done in Georgia. So they end up taking Billy to jail because either way, these are exact quotes. Either way, he's going because he's a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. Now, mind you, midway through the video, the sergeant Ruff, she hands ATF his background, which is 3 pages long. He's flipping through and he says, okay, these are juvenile. Most of the time you have to get to section 8 before you can really start looking. He goes, okay, well, here's a felony. And he goes, oh no, that was bound over. Okay. Well, then she says, I want to make sure I get the quotes right. Officer Say says, do you see a conviction conviction for the felony? He says, no, I don't see conviction on either of them. And then they're saying, so are we saying that there's no felony, that he's not a felon? Now this is brought up, I have it written at least 5 times. where they're going back and forth. They don't know whether he's a felon. They do know whether he is a felon. He isn't a felon. He is a felon. He isn't a felon. Now he has the same last name, same name as his father. There's no distinction between junior and senior. Well, his father, which I later found out, has 2 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. So my best guess is that when dispatch calls back and says, yes, he is a felon, they were referring to the father's background, not Billy's. And I even said to Sergeant Ruff, I said, that's wrong. I said, he was a minor. Anything that he's ever had, he was a minor. He's had no convictions as an adult. He's got 1 little misdemeanor for disturbing the peace from like 6-8 years ago. That's the only thing on his record. Clean driving record. So I'm explaining to this officer, I'm like, you've got it wrong. You've got it wrong. She's like, well, either way, he's going, you know. Well, then Officer Say comes up to me as they decide that they're taking him. This was 5.5, 6 hours into it. He comes up to the doorway of the budget truck that I was in, and he says, he goes, well, it comes back the firearm was stolen. Now you can hear several times in the report, you can hear it on the videos where they say that the gun was reported lost. It was my brother's gun. He was in an accident. My nephew knew we had the gun, but didn't tell the rest of the family because the family was going to back out and they were going to leave it to the ex-girlfriend. Anyway, the report was that the gun was lost, was not stolen. And this was even confirmed now in federal that no, he's not a convicted felon, and no, the gun was not stolen. It was lost. That's how they reported it after my brother's accident. So several times through the stop, she's saying, either way, he's going. He's a felon in possession of a firearm. Either way. But then again, she turns around and she's asking several times, I don't have the first, but she says, quote, someone can give me a proper charge. Well, what charge is this? I need to know a charge, if any, she says to the ATF. So all the while, she's still struggling with an articulable crime that's even being committed. She doesn't even know what to charge him with. And her text messages reveal that too, where she has to ask this officer, Say, what charge is that? And he's like 730 point something ish is what he says. So then they take him to Hamilton County Jail. Now, in the video, you can see where she actually has to call dispatch, and they change the police report. They change where the stop was. They change the county. And then he tells her, well, just say that you moved him to a safer spot. So the thing of it is when after they pulled him over, I have the video of a 4-minute stop. She gets back in her car. She gets on her phone. But right before the stop, she reaches into her vest, pulls out a box, clicks something on the bottom, sets it by her computer. By the time she gets him stopped, she's taking off her seatbelt. She gets out. She goes over to the passenger side. 4 minutes. Okay. She's back in the car. They're back on the road. Come to find out, she took him to the next stop, which was the agricultural stop on I-75. At that moment, she was at a safe place. She could have, and she notes in her thing that after the initial contact, she smelled marijuana. So now she gets him to the ag station. She has him drive from wherever they're at, smelling marijuana, drive to the ag station. They get to the ag station. This is where Officer Say comes in later on in the video, and he comments, yeah, he was talking to somebody and they told him that, oh yeah, something, I saw that coming in, and Officer Say says, yeah, that looks like a fun stop, talking about the truck. And he goes, yeah, he goes, my sergeant's got that one right now. Well, when he refers back to that in the video, the patrol car video, he leans in and says something to her and says following. He uses the word following. So I haven't been able to decipher that or break that down. I believe that what was happening is he was following, but because he was on another safety inspection at the time of the stop, he called sergeant, had the sergeant do it just by visual, just as a fun stop. That's my impression. That's my assumption. Of course, there's nothing that I can pick up yet to correlate with that, but it would correlate with the phone calls, calling the sergeant, calling Hernandez, hey, take care of this, stop, whatever. So that would have been a safe place. But instead, somebody who she believes is under the influence of an illegal drug, she says, follow me. They go on several miles back onto the highway, down the highway, and he's following her to the state farmer's market. So now The whole video, there's no audio or anything that they say is available from the time she got back in her car and starts following him. Video cuts off. Video does not pick back up until they pull into the farmer's market. Okay. In her affidavit, she states that at the ag station is where they asked Billy about any marijuana in the truck, and that without being questioned, he says yes, and he goes and gets his medical bag because he says he's got a medical marijuana card out of Michigan. Now, I have the copies of Billy's police report with his little notes in it, and he says, no, officers demanded I go get it. And mind you, there's no video, no audio apparently for this. They've refused. They haven't refused. They just said, I have the email that says, I do not have what you are requesting. There is no video, is the exact words of the email. So then, so here, while they collect this evidence and while they're questioning the driver outside the vehicle, it seems the affidavits are really hard to match because they're all over the place. They end up down at the farm station. So now, as I'm going through the video and I'm seeing this, they're saying they immediately, Officer Say comes up to Sergeant Ruff and says, so what are you thinking? She looks at him and she says, this is a cluster. She goes, I'm just going to traffic them, meaning she's just going to issue them some traffic citations, let them go on about their business. Okay. She's just going to traffic them. He proceeds to just tear the whole thing apart. Like, well, there was marijuana, da, 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 da. Now I've since learned too, that that there was a memo that went out to the Florida Highway Patrol that they were to no longer use just the smell of marijuana for probable cause to search. They have to use a odor plus, and this is quote, standard. And then they are also ordered not to make any further custodial arrests for misdemeanor amounts of marijuana. His was a misdemeanor amount. And they cannot rely on the plain odor of marijuana to conduct a search. Okay. So later on in the video, she proceeds to tell her superior that she pulled them over for a safety inspection. And in her affidavit, she says it was because what triggered the stop was they missed the scale. They drove by the scale. That right there, boom, it should have been done with. That vehicle, she later admits to that it was under 26 because she's describing the vehicle to somebody. And she says maybe about a 23,000 pounds. You have to be 26,001 to be required to stop at a weigh station. We know this. We've done our homework. That vehicle weighed 19.6 as gross vehicle weight. And even loaded, it still only weighed 22.4. Okay. So, and that's per them. They say it only weighed 22.4. So I'm finding out all this, I find out the memo. Then I'm going through this video even further, and continually she's saying, he's just pushing. He says more than once. Now, see, there was 2 glass pipes that were in the backpack that he states on video that's for smoking methamphetamine is what he says, right? Well, now I know that the oils are also smoked in these glass pipes. There's no pictures of the glass pipes. The glass pipes are never tested. They're never seen in any of the evidence sheets. Billy was never drug tested, but all the while he keeps saying, oh, there's meth in there and I'm going to find it. Oh, there's meth. I know there's meth in there. I mean, he goes on to say this several times. I have it written down. You can hear it very plain and clear. So he is adamant that there is methamphetamine in this truck. He goes and searches this truck by himself. And in the video, and I try to remain very objective and not to let my emotions get the better of me, but video doesn't lie. This man is doing something in the front seat of that passenger side of that truck for a long period of time. Okay. But then when he comes back to the car, he claims to have then found these glass bottle grenades, as they keep referring to them, and didn't want to touch anymore. But yet he was up there for an awful long time. When I saw myself, Billy's medical bag was the first that was grabbed, and that's where these bottles were. It was in his medical bag. These bottles that they are calling grenades are empty shot glasses that he had some mortar fireworks that had spilled into a box, and he had poured them into the glass bottles. They were wrapped with green tape because he decided to be silly and was going to wrap the handle of his knife with green floral tape. And I explained to him right before we left Michigan, I said, you do realize that stuff is sticky. That's floral tape. And he's like, what? And he feels it. And he's like, oh man. So all his stuff was sitting in his lap, getting ready to go. And he just takes the bottles and he just starts wrapping it around the bottles, taking it off directly off the knife and onto the bottles. That is how the green tape ended up being on the bottles. So then we stop at we call them the littles, the grandkids in Indiana, and let off a mortar. They thought that was just the coolest thing, that they're Amish. My son-in-law is Amish. So they don't see things like that very often. They live way out in the country. And we had on down. So that explains what those bottles were, and the pipes that they claim were methamphetamine pipes, which they were never tested. They're not even on any evidence report that we've seen. And he was never tested either. So throughout the traffic stop, all this stuff is going on. There's one point in the videos where like 6 or 7 officers actually go up to the door of Hernandez's car. Obvious intimidation, and are questioning him, but because there's no audio, you have no idea what they're saying. There's another incident where they all stop about 3 hours into the stop, and the one officer goes around. He's taking orders for McDonald's. Okay, so he sends Hernandez in his patrol car, Shay's car. As he's going in to get in the car, you hear the officer say, holler out, "Hey, remember my video's on, or my camera's on. You want to shut that off before you get going?" He goes, "Yep, I'm shutting it off now." Okay, so these guys are turning their stuff on and off whenever they feel. She doesn't turn her, what I later find out is her wireless mic. She doesn't turn her wireless mic back on either until probably 2 hours into the stop at the farm market. So all this time she's got her mic turned off, purposely turned off. And you see her on that 4-minute video, taking it out of her vest, purposely turning it off and setting it up by her computer. Okay. I'm told that there's no video or audio from Officer Say's vehicle, which he was just on a safety. He was on a safety inspection prior to this. And he brags about that. And then when Hernandez originally gets there, you see him walk around, because I got his, like I said, chapters 1, 3, 4, and 5. Chapter 2 is missing out of his download of videos, which would be the interior of the patrol car where Billy was. You see him come around the front of his car, and then he's got what looks like his voice recorder in his hand. And then he kind of looks at the hood of the car, like he's looking right at the camera, and then kind of backs right away from it. And then he comes back around the side of the patrol car again and follows Say over to the truck. Now, mind you, he's going to show Hernandez, "Hey, look what I found, my little prize," meaning the glass bottles. So if these were so dangerous and everything, why does he keep taking people back to the truck to show them? He's very proudly showing them. Does it the same to the ATF. Doesn't let the ATF go do it. Shows them pictures. "Oh, you want to see it? Come on, I'll show you," he says in the video. So I don't know what this guy's deal was with wanting to pin so much stuff on him. They even went as far as, he says, makes 3 times he mentions, "There's a pipe coming from the bottom of that truck. There's a pipe coming from the bottom of that truck. It's white pipe coming out." Well, later on, I asked Billy, I said, "Babe, what was the white pipe underneath the truck?" "Right behind the cab." It would have been right behind the cab. And you can see this officer say he's under the cab with a flashlight. I mean, he's all over the place on this truck. He goes, "Under the truck behind the cab." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's a piece of PVC pipe where they slide extra tools down in behind the cab." I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They use that reason to impound the truck and all the equipment to take it down to be x-rayed, because they thought that it was something horrible. Well, then it's also stated, Say comes back and tells Sergeant Ruff, "Oh yeah, they've seen these before. They're thrown at protests at cops." And he taps her and he says, how does he say it? He said, "They're doing this. They've seen this at protests. Congrats, you just saved cops." Okay. All right, come on now. These, first of all, have never been seen at protests, because this was a collector's item alcohol set. They're not something you just randomly pick up. So they were never seen at protests being thrown at cops. And he's like, "Oh, congratulations, you saved cops." He tells the officer on 2 different occasions, "You cannot search that. That's my medical bag in the state of Michigan. Officers are not allowed to search a medical bag without a warrant." And she says, "Well, that's in Michigan. That's not here." that's when I'm sorry, I have notes that oh, at the very beginning of the video, you'll see Sergeant Ruff in her vehicle, in her patrol car, in the interior cam, before they actually, you'll see the truck drive by that Billy's in. You'll see her, she's going like this, and she's got something in her hand, and she's looking at it. Okay, no gloves, no nothing. And I later find out that that is actually the marijuana that they had collected from Billy at the ag station. So now we've got handling evidence with no gloves on. Mind you, this is also dead center in the middle of the pandemic, because we are essential delivery drivers. We actually volunteered because of the pandemic. Not one agency, not one officer, not one agent, not one agency, no one wore a mask the entire time. Now, Billy is considered a vulnerable individual through the CDC. He's considered the vulnerable individual. He's got COPD. He's got respiratory disease. He has only 59% lung capacity. Okay, so all the while, and he's not required to wear a mask because it could be more detrimental to him. So then, you know, on top of everything else, none of these people are wearing any masks. Okay. Officer Say seems to set up a scenario to Sergeant Ruff, and throughout the video, you can see that she's kind of like losing the grasp of the whole thing, because she's like, oh, I thought you said there was meth. And he goes, no. He goes, but there's meth in there. I just haven't found it yet, he says. And you can see that she's really struggling with this traffic stop, because she says over and over how much of a cluster it is. She doesn't know who to call. She doesn't know, you know, the steps. She doesn't know the charges. She doesn't know she doesn't know who's got a bomb squad, who doesn't. Also, during this whole thing, while they've got all these officers and all this money being tied up, the sheriffs go on a high-speed chase, and the guy crashes into a guardrail, apparently. I don't know what the outcome with that. I don't know if there was injuries or anything like that. But that's another thing, too. You've got all these officers standing around, having McDonald's, not knowing what they're doing, violating a man's civil rights, horribly violating his civil rights. And there's a high-speed chase with the local sheriff going up and down I-75 and having traffic accidents. And I'm just like, my mind is blown. You know, this is all stuff that I'm coming into light now. So that's basically the long and short of where it ended up. Dispatch finally came through and said, because she goes, again, at the very end, they still haven't Mirandized him. He's still in the back of this car, handcuffed. Nobody has gone and checked on him or talked to him. And she says at the very end, she says, I'm going to call dispatch and find out if he's a convicted felon or not. So she doesn't even know if he's a convicted felon. And she calls and dispatch says, yes, he is a convicted felon. No, he's not a convicted felon. And so they take him to jail, obviously, because she states through the whole stop, either way he's going because of that. They take him to jail. Now, also during the traffic stop, you hear her say, hey, do you have the gun, the firearm that belonged to my brother? No, I don't. Somebody else says, next thing you know, she's just strolling up to her patrol car with this firearm in her hand, no gloves again, and is clearing the gun as she's walking up to her patrol car, and then puts it on the dash, gets out of her patrol car and goes and does something else while that gun's sitting on the dash. I mean, just the carelessness and the mind-blowing stuff and the deal that they made out of this. And even ATF points out that, well, I don't see he's a convicted felon, you know. At one point she is asked, well, did you question him about what's in the bottles? And she says, no, we haven't even Mirandized him yet. We didn't want to ruin it if ATF wanted to pick it up. I mean, they keep saying we don't want to ruin it. We haven't Mirandized him. And at the very beginning, she acknowledges that they haven't, because I know there's supposed to be loopholes as far as, you know, oh, well, if, you know, once you start questioning or something, it's an assumption of a Mirandization or whatever. No, they acknowledge very clearly throughout the whole video that they have not even read him his rights. And he even says, I asked him, Officer Say, I said, you're not arresting him, right? You're not taking him into jail. And he goes, well, that's still to be determined. He says, he is being detained right now. Okay. So, and that's what he told me, but he goes back and he tells Sergeant Ruff that as well on video. So they end up taking him to Hamilton County Jail. The ATF comes over. My truck was searched 3 times, and unfortunately I didn't know my rights, but they made a very big deal that I was very forthcoming with information. I was very forthcoming with letting them search. That ATF, it was said to ATF, it was said to the other officers that I was very forthcoming, that we had nothing to hide. Our stories completely matched as far as we were not in commerce, because she actually had to call 3 people to even deem it. And all the while she's saying, well, I feel this way, or I think this way. And he's doing the same thing. And I'm like, I've watched enough audits. Oh, are we the feeling police now? And that's exactly what they're doing. They're going through there on their feelings and their guts and what they think, and not on actual facts, or actual facts that they've, you've just asked 3 different people and all 3 stories are the same, and first of all, you had no reason to stop him. He didn't have to stop at the way station. He did not have to stop legally, and then to have this all happen with the whole marijuana, she proceeds to tell her superior later on, I smelled marijuana. I searched it. She tells him right there on the video, she's telling her superior this, because he's like, well, run it down for me again, and then he's kind of guiding her, just like Say was guiding her on what to put when they changed up the traffic stop. So they've got several different locations. They've changed up the traffic stop. They've accused him of being a felon. I mean, she continually, the whole stop, she's telling everybody, he's a convicted felon and a firearm. He's a convicted felon with a firearm. And he's telling everybody that there's meth in the truck, that they were smoking meth, that they got this on meth. Okay. So they've created a crime scene. They have created this enormous crime scene. They have now made him out to be this horrible terrorist with bombs in his truck, with drugs. He's a felon. He's got this firearm. They created a crime scene that was not there by doing this. It has been a downward spiral since then. He's been in for 7 months. He's been in jail now because the feds decided to pick up the case. Now, there was a plea deal on the table between state and Billy, which he never saw. And we found out later on that the minute they found out the feds were going to pick him up, they withdrew that plea deal. He was then held in Hamilton County on a $76,000 bond, which I have lists of at least 30 to 50 other bonds in that county and surrounding counties, none of which for that charge or that level of a charge warrant a $76,000 bond. So he was held on an excessive bond, and I have bond guidelines and everything that I've done. I mean, I've got notebook after notebook after notebook, notes, studies that I've done, pages and pages of all these other cases. The average bond is about 50 grand, and that's for rape, vehicular homicide, kidnapping. Those are all like $50,000 bonds. So we file a motion. His grandmother pays $2,000 for an attorney to try and get his bond reduced. They reduce it by 10 grand, I think it was. So it's still an excessive bond, and it's stated right there in the court hearing too that that's just not reasonable. You can't deem him indigent and then give him a $50,000 bond. It's just not reasonable. So he's held there on this unreasonable bond, which we had also had issues at his first appearance, because at his first appearance in Hamilton, they bring him in, and then pardon me, I want to grab the papers. You have that other staple? That one right there. It's got the share star on it. So they bring him in on his first appearance, and we actually did file a complaint regarding Judge Scaff, because apparently Judge Scaff has been doing this before. On the facsimiles, they say that that he was arraigned at 3:30 p.m. Judge's record of first appearance states 8/12, August 12th of 20 at 3:30 p.m. Well, he wasn't, even if that's a typo, on the 11th at 3:30, he was still in the back of a patrol car handcuffed. They did not leave that farmer's market stand until 5:15 at night. So, but then the fax, if you look up at the top of the sheet, the facsimile is faxed on 8/11. So we've got a judge now post-dating his first appearances and faxing him over to the jail like an inappropriate judge, and post-dating these first appearances, right? And stating that it was by phone. And not only that, but does the same thing on the first appearance order where they issued the bond. They date it all for 8/12, but yet they fax it, you know, on the 11th. It's like, how can that be possible? So I have a judge's signature that says that this was done on August 12th, when in fact it was done on August 11th and faxed over, but the dates and the times were adjusted to ensure, which I found out by state statutes, Florida state statutes, mind you, we are Michigan residents. We are Michigan residents all this while. But as Florida state statutes say that you have to give the person in custody and the public defender time to at least meet prior to the first appearance, but the first appearance has to be done within 24 to 48 hours. Don't quote me. I know it's within that very small time frame. So that would mean why he would give a post dated to show that he gave time. No, he didn't give time. He got his first appearance right when he got there, and it was by phone. He said the deputy was standing next to him, hands him the phone, so he has no idea that he's even talking to a judge. The judge says a few words and says that he's being held on such and such bond. They verifies this Billy Mitchell or whatever, and he hands the phone back. He said it took maybe 30 seconds on the phone, and he said he had no idea that's who he was even talking to until I told him that was your first appearance, judge. So we did file a complaint with the state regarding that. So now he's sitting here in Hamilton, just waiting for whatever. We think that they were holding him on an excessive bond for the feds, because I think what happened is the feds were afraid that he was going to post bond. And apparently because these Florida Highway Patrol have created this horrible crime scene, they're concerned about him getting out. I can see why, on black and white, why it would look that way. Absolutely. I don't deny that at all. Why it would look that way and why they would be concerned. However, that Friday, after this was on a Tuesday, that Friday, I finally get a hold of Agent Hooker with the ATF. Agent Hooker and I had a long conversation. I have notes of the conversation. And he explains to me that I said, I'm telling you, he doesn't have a felony. He's not a felon. I said, Berry County will confirm that he does not have a felon. He doesn't have a felony. He has the same last name as his dad. Him and his dad share a name. Okay. But they're not distinguished by junior and senior. He goes, well, I plan on calling up to Berry County on Monday because I got my supervisors breathing down my neck, wondering why we're picking up this charge. I said, exactly. He goes, so I understand. He goes, do I think Billy was going to load those things, throw them on a loaded bus and hurt people? He says, absolutely not, is an exact quote. And I said, thank you. I said, I plan on calling Berry County Monday morning as well. He goes, we'll see if we can't get this all straightened out. So I don't hear anything, not getting return phone calls. Next thing you know, he's being picked up by the U.S. Marshals. He's been indicted on federal charges now it falls under firearms for 2 counts. 1 count of an unlawful user of a controlled substance while in possession of a firearm. He does have a medical marijuana card out of Michigan, always had at the time of the stop. Officers say, I just picked up on the video today when I was listening, says, oh yeah, I called and checked on that. He doesn't have a medical marijuana card. Yes, he does. And he's had one the whole time, and I have proof of that. And then the second indictment is 2 destructive devices, meaning the glass bottles. Now, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but at the same time, there was 3. Now we're only dealing with 2. Okay, so, which is fine with me because now, each device is 10 years. So now he's facing up to 30 years for each count of a crime and a crime scene that these Florida Highway Patrol created. And had he gotten a decent bond through Hamilton, he would have been able to be a part of his case and a part of his defense. And they would have seen that he wasn't a flight risk and that he wasn't a danger to society. And they would have let him out on the federal level too, because they most of the people they do let out on bond. So I find out who his public defender is through the federal case. And I tell her on September 26th, I sent her an email, and I have all the emails and everything. I sent her an email with attachments of his medical history, because now we're all really freaking out because COVID's going rampant in the judicial system and in the jails.
And I send her his medical records. I send the medical marijuana card. I send the Michigan executive order stating that that truck did not need to be registered. I even send her executive orders from Florida, the Florida Motor Carrier Safety Administration. On July 1st, they issue a nationwide waiver on registrations, CDL licenses, and all of that. They, you know, Florida is going to accept anybody nationwide with that, and they're going to put a waiver out on it. They did that on a memorandum on July 1st. Okay. So I sent her everything that could refute anything that the Assistant United States Attorney would have for a reason to detain him, along with a disability claim that he's been in the middle of working on that he's now gotten denied, his child support and issues to be able to see his daughter, which have now been shut down because of this case. Everything. Okay. I sent him to her in an email. On the day of the bond hearing, we get to the court, we get to the federal building. She walks in. Now, she still to this day has not met with Billy, hasn't even looked him in the eyes. I hand her a manila folder. Now I'm giving her hard copies of everything that I have sent her. Okay. She takes them, puts them down with her stuff, asks me a couple questions. Court's called. Okay. So now it's been 45 days and I had not even laid eyes on Billy until that day. And he came into the courtroom and shackled, belly chained, the most horrific, something I never want to see again, but unfortunately I will in the future, not knowing that. And she proceeds to sit back and not use one bit of evidence that I gave her to refute everything that the United States Attorney was saying. And I'm thinking to myself, what is happening? Okay. So they had rescheduled the bond hearing. So when they go to the bond hearing and we're sitting there, and I realize at the beginning of the court thing, Mr. Agent Hooker with the ATF himself is sitting right at the table with the Assistant United States Attorney. He's sitting right there next to her. I'm going, is this really happening right now? The public defender doesn't use any of the information I gave her. I'm like, dude, they're saying to keep him because of this, and this, and you have all the information in front of you, and you're not using it to defend him, to get him out on bond. You know, every time the judge asks the Assistant United States Attorney a question, Agent Hooker leans over and goes, and she looks at the judge and answers. Like 95% of the questions were answered by that ATF agent. So now we've got an ATF agent sitting with the Assistant United States Attorney answering the questions to the judge. And then you've got the public defender who's not using any of the information. So I'm like, feeling like I'm in a dream. You just can't make this shit up. Okay. It gets better. So he gets denied bond. Okay. So through the mix of everything, I'm still 12 to 14 hours a day. We're Michigan residents. I'm here in Florida. Thank God my aunts opened up their home to me. I showed up on their doorstep with my backpack and his backpack and nothing, you know. They provided me with a laptop and a place to live and food and, I mean, just everything. They took care of Billy while he was in there for like commissary and phone calls. So I have nothing but 12 to 14 hours a day where I'm busting. I'm looking up case laws. I'm looking up memorandums. I'm pulling FOIA requests. I'm finding everything and anything I possibly can. Well, I had come across HR 6400, which is a bill that would allow the U.S. Marshals, or it would actually demand that the Marshals go and release all pretrial detainees that are considered vulnerable individuals, which would fall under Billy. So when I inquired that to the investigator, he forwards that on to the public defender. And in this email progression, all of a sudden I get emails back that says, I read this one from Maurice Grant, which is the Director of Public Defenders, Federal, in Jacksonville Division, Middle District of Florida, that says, well, didn't he assault somebody in another state with a knife and it was found in the truck? And how does that make him not make him a danger? Okay, I see this and I'm like, whoa, I know where they got it. It was Google, because Billy and I would look on Google and stuff, and it was funny because we had just seen this thing. This guy went crazy with a machete out in Texas, right? Has the same name as Billy, and he's Billy Minchell. And so I typed back right away to the investigator, and I said, no. I said, that's another Billy Minchell. I said, that's some 38-year-old blonde-haired guy from Texas. Okay. Well, then I start looking back, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm reading an email from Lisa Call, his public defender, writing Maurice Grant, stating, next time you want to do rosters, please keep in mind what a headache this case has been for us, referring to Billy's case. And she goes on to say that how the girlfriend has found all this information that apparently nobody should be held on pretrial detention and that he should be released under compassionate release. Wrong. Compassionate release, you have to do 5 years of your time. I know the laws by now. Okay. I've done it. Okay. I know that compassionate release does not even come close to affecting Billy. And then that was when he came back with that reply that says, well, how is he not a danger? Because he's assuming. So that tells me, are you kidding me? Now our federal public defenders are using Google for background checks? Are you kidding me right now? Right? And then it says, and then the investigator pipes in and goes, and a failure to appear out of Allegan County, Michigan. Okay. The failure to appear out of Allegan County, Michigan was covered under executive orders that stated that there shouldn't be any for traffic violations or anything like that. There should be no failure to appear warrants issued during the period of time in which that warrant was issued. He has since gotten a different attorney for that case. It was a big mess. Apparently the person he had on his case, actually, there was like 7 other people. He was never on the docket for the day that they say he missed court. Big mess. Okay. And I clarified all that with them prior to that. So now here this public defender is, again, now creating a situation that wasn't there when he pipes in and says, and a failure to appear out of Allegan, Michigan. So now I've got a public defender, her boss, and an investigator, they've all deemed him guilty already. No wonder they didn't try to defend him. So we went and he filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus for violation of civil rights, ineffectiveness of counsel, his rights. He's been assaulted. He's been threatened by lieutenants and other COs when I filed, because I originally filed a complaint with the Bradford County Jail, because this is where he's housed at now. Sorry, he was taken from Hamilton to Bradford. And the complaint was given to apparently the lieutenant in charge. Well, that lieutenant and another officer sent a third CO to get Billy out of his unit and brought him into a room because delayed medical. They've delayed his medical. And he threatens him and tells him that this is what worries me the most, saying any of this, because he threatened him and told him that he would cut off all communications with me, that he would send him to Nassau up north. And if he thought the hole was bad, he had to see what Nassau's like. And he says, didn't we take care of your medical on time? Didn't we? And here I could just imagine Billy in a room alone with all these people. I did FOIA the video to verify that he was removed from the housing area at that time, and they no longer have it because they only keep it for 30 days. And then when I get on the phone with Billy that day, I'll never forget the look on his face. And he looked at me and he said, the emails have to stop. Now, I have emailed over 179 organizations, attorneys, congressmen, senators, somebody to just show justice. And he said the emails have to stop. And he's white as a ghost. I said, what? Because all the while I'm checking with him and he's going, no, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. And he says, the emails have to stop. And I go, why? And he goes, they just have to stop. Well, then he ended up being assaulted by another inmate. And I've sent you, Rogue, I've sent you the color photos. Nose is broken, eyes completely black and blue. And so he was sent to the hole for that. And pardon me, I have to grab the next. Now, when he was sent to the hole, he actually felt comfortable enough, I guess, to tell me a little bit more about what had happened with the emails. That was when he informed me that he had been threatened, because at that time I stopped. And so I stopped. He was being threatened to take away. They said, he told me they would cut him off of the kiosk. They would cut him off of everything that he knew on the outside. So, and this is the first time that I have shared that with anybody, because I honestly fear for his safety. So, because the captain, this lieutenant that threatened him, is now the captain. And prior to him becoming the captain that was in office then went around, and she says I have a copy of the discipline report. She goes in and interviews all of her staff, and she says, and they confirm, and as I approach Billy, she sees that he has a black eye in the process of healing. So now we've got a whole facility where they see a guy all of a sudden with a black eye and a broken nose, and nobody reports it. So what kind of abuse else is going on in these facilities to these men and women? I'm thinking to myself, when I got the discipline report, I'm going, she admits right there that it was obvious, those are her words, obvious, that he had a black eye and that was healing, which means nobody reported it. And per their process, they are supposed to, even any incident that didn't occur or any suspected incident, they are required by their own process to report it, to sign, to write it, to sign it. The whole time that he was in the hole, they don't follow the process. He was only tested for coronavirus one time. He has been shackled and belly chained, which I've sent you pictures, Rogue, just to use the phone when he was in the hole, which is considered excessive force. And it states right there in the federal guidelines and the Florida model jail standards that is excessive force. That a federal holding inmates in a county facility, they're supposed to contact the marshals prior to using excessive force, meaning the extra shackles, belly chains, etc. They are permitted to move around the facility, but only if it deems to be a safety measure. But then they do this to him, and they leave him alone on a video chat with me for over 40 minutes at a time. The food has just been absolutely horrific. He's told me about times where they've left the food sit in the warmer for 2 hours before they feed it to him. There has been, he filed grievances about a mattress because the mattress he got was not up to standards for Florida model jail standards. So the habeas corpus goes on to say about the ineffectiveness of counsel. He asked the federal public defender to revisit his bond 31 times. We either went through the investigator, her, insinuated, asked, requested, because we've got all this new evidence, because she never submitted it to begin with. It's considered new evidence to warrant having a bond hearing reheard. And again, under a memorandum from the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office, to all public defenders and prosecutors there to take into consideration, the prosecutors are to take into consideration the pandemic, the coronavirus, and all the stuff going on when deciding to have someone detained. Well, the Assistant United States Attorney says flat out right there, she says, well, I haven't seen any medical records. I'm going, yeah, well, his attorney's got them right in front of her. She doesn't use them. And now I'm seeing why. It's like, who's scratching who's back here, So the habeas corpus gets filed. It is accepted for face. I guess they have them reviewed first. And then if they are shown to be acceptable by face, to have merit, they are what I call accepted. And it was accepted by Judge Clint. And it was designated track 1. So I'm ecstatic. I'm thinking this is awesome. I've already talked to the clerk's office about, I told her that he was going to have to send them back to me and that I was going to have to upload them from home on the habeas. And she said, that's not a problem. She even gave me the email to send it to. to upload it. And so it's designated track 1. There, it's put into Pacer to that she is to contact the Inspector General, because if there's ever an incident of someone being at risk of to themselves, or if they've been injured, or if there's a safety issue or whatever, it's a they call it an ongoing order to where they can implement it at any time. Judge Corrigan, I think, is who signs these orders that are issued, at will. And he orders that clerk's office to contact the Office of Inspector General. I was conferring with the clerk because there's no jail library, so to speak, of law library. The law library consists of old cases. That's it. They don't have law books. They don't have rules. They don't have jail standards. They have nothing. Okay. So, so he sends it back to me. I send it in. They accept it, assign it first track. Next thing you know, I jump on Pacer, and Judge Davis, who oversees the magistrate that refused him bond, Judge Davis has now taken this habeas corpus, dismissed it, sent us a reply as to why, and one of which was because he wanted the relief that he was seeking in this habeas corpus. And to seek relief, you have to do these standards, these rule standards and everything. And one of which was he had to go back and address his public defender to have his bond reissued. I'm thinking, did you not read the habeas corpus? That's part of the issue, is that he's already asked 31 times. And then he also goes on to state in his dismissal that his other allegations are conditions of confinement. Well, yeah, they're conditions of confinement because he's being illegally detained. Of course, it's going to be conditions of confinement, should be addressed in a civil rights complaint. Okay, so they dismiss it. They say it's entered prematurely. Well, it's not entered prematurely. I did the 2241. If he had entered the 2254, it would have been prematurely because he hasn't been sentenced yet. 2241 is for like ICE and pretrial detainees. It says it right at the top. It was not filed it was not filed prematurely. So we get another attorney. And this attorney, I'm doing background on him. I'm looking at him thinking, okay, he's one of the top 100 back in 2017, top 100 trial lawyers, so on and so forth. And he even addressed with Billy about possibly he was going to put in a request to have all the evidence suppressed for the illegal search and the unlawful traffic stop. Well, he gets all the stuff from Lisa Call, which was the public defender before. And obviously, if he has all these awards and is this good of an attorney, he obviously didn't look at the video, because he would have seen all these discrepancies, the turning off of the audio, the accusations, the creation of a crime scene. And now he's telling Billy that he could face up to 10 years. And they're wanting to do a plea deal now. And we're down to 14 days before his status conference. And they're talking plea deal, and which would make him a convicted felon for the rest of his life. That the ATF actually sent me and him paperwork to our home offering these bombs or grenades that they keep calling them, offering them back to us. I have a forfeiture petition. They send us a blank petition to fill out. They send us how if you want these back, then you have to pay what they're worth, and they're all marked $1. Each item is marked $1, but yet they're such a destructive device. Sorry, I don't mean to be cynical, but so I'm like, the case isn't even, I mean, he hasn't even like been in the case for very long, and now they're offering this stuff back to us. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, sure. Yes, we want them back because we originally wanted them as a celebration to put on our shadow boxes at home. I have pictures of the shadow boxes empty where they were going to go. It was planned. I even have the full one that was on the shadow box, the empty shadow box. I even took pictures and moved it where you could see the dust line around the one that we had put on there originally to show that that's where they were going. There was no intent. There was no malicious intent. Destructive device has to be, from what I understand, derived from a weapon to create a weapon. It was neither of those. Okay, so last I knew that the old public defender was asking for a bill of particulars to understand why they could charge him with that. which was never produced, because they're not a weapon. They have to be derived from a weapon to create a weapon. Yeah, there's a bunch of other little statutes, but ultimately that is the definition of a destructive device. It's got no ignition, it's got no impact, it's got no, like what you would have with a gun. And it says right there at the bottom of that statute that the following are exempt, and one of those is pyrotechnics, which fireworks are pyrotechnics, are exempt, but yet they're still doing it. Only 4 people out of 2019, 4 people out of over 1,800 people that were charged federally, 4 of them were exonerated or won at trial. 4 out of 1,800. 90% of them took plea deals because they put these guys in these jails and they leave them there when the marshals are responsible to follow procedure to make sure that these guys are being taken care of. You know, everybody always says they call it club fed. They call it club fed. Yeah, not anymore. And so they're offering these things back. Yeah, we want them back. So we did file a petition and ask for them back. We haven't heard back yet. I don't know if they realized that they needed to hang on to them or what the deal is. The state of Florida has since seized the truck, the backhoe, the generator, all the over $27,000 worth of equipment they have seized from the traffic stop. It's gotten to the point now where, I mean, he has lost so much and had to suffer so much because tyrants want to create a crime scene that isn't even there and then waste all the taxpayers' money on doing all of this. And I'm watching it unfold in front of me. It's like I'm watching a movie. And then going through the roles this last 7 months and witnessing his suffering and knowing that it's all because of an illegal stop. It's all because of an illegal search. And I'm looking at the laws and I'm looking at him and I'm going, I can't really talk to him over the phone about it. But if he was free like he should be, then we could discuss it, for fear of what's being recorded, what's going to be misconstrued of what I say. And finally, the only time that this man has ever gotten frustrated with me was when he said to me, I can't see what you're seeing, he says, in frustration. Other than that, he has maintained his composure. He was assaulted, did not fight back, but yet he spent 17 days in the hole for that. He has treated all the COs with respect, even the ones that don't deserve it. I personally have even complimented on Bradford County's site a couple of COs for doing their job. So I'm not biased. I'm not partial because it's Billy. I'm partial for what's right and what's wrong. And what they're doing to him and what they have done to him for 7 months is wrong. It's wrong, Rogue. And I hope that somebody out there sees this, some attorney in the next 14 days agrees and snatches it up. I have not fabricated any of this. I have not made any of this up. I'm very diligent about my statements, very diligent about what I know to be true and what I can back up with legal documents, including the fact that the state troopers are not allowed to manually turn off their wireless mics unless they are, I would get the wording right. Dylan, what's that wording on the wireless mics?
They're not allowed to manually unless non-lawful.
They're not allowed to even turn off their mics unless only allowed to manually turn off recording device during a non-enforcement incident. Non-enforcement. She turned hers off right before she attempts to do an enforcement. It says in her affidavit, her original reason for even catching him or looking at him was because he passed a weigh station. He was 19,006 gross vehicle weight of that vehicle. And she knows it because later on in the video, she's telling somebody about it, that it was probably about a 23 truck because they thought she was talking about a semi truck. And it's not. It's just, it's like a big overgrown Ford is what it is. And even passing an ag station, he could pass an ag station because he was in a pickup truck and everything was visible in the bed of the truck. Everything was visible what he was hauling. I've looked, I've searched. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not some magical person. Nobody knows all the laws, but I know what I've read and what I've found to know that this is wrong. Very wrong.
No, I
And I know,
absolutely agree with you. That's why we had you here to do your story today. Now, like I said at the beginning, now we have the story. I'll have the evidence that you sent me, like you said, the full color pictures. I'll put everything into a file and I'll upload
absolutely.
so the subscribers can go and download that and see that. But let's
Yep.
talk about what's next. You said 14 days until his status conference. Is that correct?
Yes, March 22nd is his next status conference for federal in the Middle District of Florida, Division of Jacksonville.
Okay. Is that something that you're allowed to go to?
Yes, they actually, the last few of them have been via telephone, and Billy has had anywhere from 2 to 8 to 10 people that have called in to listen to the case. I usually can find that phone number and everything on Pacer. So far, they have not said that it's going to be via telephone. Normally, they don't have the inmates go to the status conferences. It's just where the judge goes through and says, what's the status of, the case? My concern is that because this is like the fourth or fifth continuance, is that the attorney is already talking to Billy about pleas. And the assistant United States attorney, he said, is pushing for at least 5 years jail time. So the status conference is open to the public. Yes.
Okay. All right. I'd like to get information on that. If it's open to the public to where we can go,
Yeah.
I'd like to be there myself. But if not, if it's on the phone, I would like to call in. I'm sure some subscribers would like to call in and listen to it as well.
Absolutely. As soon as I hear, I'll get you the information.
I would also like, any contact information you have for, the defender, the person that's working on his case now.
Yep.
And anybody else that, like you said, has been involved with the case, any of the investigators.
Yep.
I'd like to give them a call and get them a chance to comment on this as well.
Yep.
If I could nail them down on some issues.
Yep.
So we'll get all that together. Now you said you had a PayPal. I'd like to include that in the link to the video, and because I myself don't like to collect money to give to other people. I'd like the money to go straight to the people that need it. And right now, it sounds like you could definitely use money for a lawyer and even possibly bond if that's even still available at this late date. They might not even allow that because he's so close to the end of the case. But definitely some kind of a lawyer. We could definitely try to get you some money. I know you said you had some money, but hopefully we can get you a little bit more money. And hopefully make the a little bit easier to get some, any lawyer involved with this, because you definitely need a lawyer. These public defenders, like, as you've seen, as the story progresses, we can all see these guys aren't there to help you. They're definitely not there to help you at all.
No.
So you need some real representation. So we're going to include all that. You said Billy's in Bradford County, correct?
Yes, Bradford County Jail. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I'll go outside there and do a little Free Billy protest myself. And
we'll join you. You name it. When and where? I've got probably at least 4 or 5 other people that would go. I've got my nephew here from Michigan. He's working on he was given the nickname Two-Step, free Two-Step shirts. I mean, we will be there with bells on anytime.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I'm thinking I can't lock down a date right now,
That's
but
fine.
I'm thinking it's got to be sometime soon.
Yes.
So maybe if not this week, then early next week. But yeah, I'll lock something in together for them. we can do that as well. But yeah, this is definitely an issue that needs addressed. In this case specifically, but in all cases, I mean, this isn't, something out of the norm for them.
I got the names of a couple of other people this is kind of happening to as well. So
Right. This is right up their alley. This is exactly what they do.
yep.
We're gonna have to end the interview here in a second,
Okay.
but
Yep.
I just wanted to let you know that we will definitely do whatever we can that really some kind of justice. We'll do whatever we can. We'll be there as much as we can. I mean, that's all we can do, but I mean, at least it's something. At least some people are willing to listen and try to do something, because this can't go on like this. I mean, they're putting away our fellow Americans just to make them, just to keep their jobs. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And this is somebody who actually we volunteered at the beginning of the pandemic. We were delivering medical supplies to Florida. We volunteered for it. We've taken service dogs and trained them to be on the road dogs for people. We have done. I mean, I've watched this man give his last $20 to a Hispanic gentleman with 4 small children after helping the gentleman load his lumber at Home Depot. Reached up above the dash, took our last $20, gave it to this man, told him to take his kids for ice cream. I mean, I've watched him give his clothes literally off his back to a homeless guy at a truck stop one time. It's just wrong.
It doesn't matter who the state picks. It could be anybody, and usually they are good people. Usually,
Right.
So unfortunately, we think because we're good people and we do good things that's going to shield us from these bad people. And that's never the case.
They've got Billy believing that it must have been something. He must have done something wrong in his life. Why he's being punished like this now? It's got his faith that busted.
Well, if anything we've done wrong in our life that gets us this kind of treatment is that we failed to pay attention to the way this stuff was going 20 years ago. That's
Amen.
What we failed to do.
Amen.
It's not that we failed to be good people, because we've never failed to be good people.
No.
What we failed at was thinking that these other people were good and not watching them and allowing them to do whatever they wanted, thinking that they would be good people like we are.
Yep, and that they were protecting our rights. They're supposed to be protecting our rights and upholding our rights, and they're not. They're taking them and they're squashing them under their feet and laughing at them and laughing in our faces in the process. Because they can do whatever they want.
Absolutely. That's exactly what they're doing. But listen, we're going to cut this short. We want to keep it in a timely manner so that way people will watch it and not, drift off. So,
yes,
if we can, we're all going to stay on. We're going to end the recording, but we're going to stay on for another minute, and then we'll get going. So, guys, again, this is Rogue Nation. This got Eyes on the State here helping us out today. And this is Jennifer and her story of her fiance, Billy. And we're going to, again, bring you updates on this as we go along. We'll keep you updated. Jennifer will keep us updated, and we can only situations. But no matter what, we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting today. We're going to keep fighting tomorrow. We're going to keep fighting next week because somebody has to. Because when somebody doesn't, this is what happens. Okay, people get out of control.
Yep.
So, all right. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Read the law. It's right there in your hand.
The Activism News Network is now online.
Yeah, easily over 100.
What's your name and your badge number?
suspect, 97, he's fishing. He also has an AR-15 and a Glock.